So last week, I was doing a group coaching call with a bunch of clients that I work with. If you're new to my channel, new to me, I'm an organizational psychologist. So my background is that I have an MBA. I also have a PhD in psychology. My focus in psychology was on industrial organizational psychology, was essentially psychology of business. I have my own practice where I work with companies all over the world to help create better work experiences. Work is literally always on my mind, and my perspective about work is we spend so much time at it that we shouldn't allow ourselves the moment of being miserable. It's just not worth it. Life is too short. And so one of the things I've been doing lately to help workplaces adapt to this new era in terms of COVID-19 and how we're handling it and how we're helping our teams through it is I have a group program. We meet once a week with managers to focus on how can we help take care of our employees' emotional health, keep them focused on the task at hand in this crazy time. And something strange happened on last week's call. Listen, we've been meeting for 2 months together as a group, and then on last week's call, someone in the group pipes up, I swear, out of nowhere, and was like, "Carlin, what you're talking about is white supremacy." We weren't even talking about race. We weren't. What we were talking about is helping people feeling safe going back to the office. That was what we were talking about. It had nothing to do with race at all, but I was told I was a white supremacist. Okay, that was an experience I had not yet had in my work environment. Sure, I've got called all sorts of names after my Trump rally article came out, and I had the gall to say that Trump supporters aren't Nazis. I heard a lot of insults then, but I had not yet experienced it in my work environment, so it was a different thing for me. Now, the universe is a perfect place. It is a perfect place. And on Twitter today, someone sent me this document that I'm going to react to in this video. The characteristics of a white supremacy culture. And this is all about how workplaces are white supremacists. And I'm going to go through this document. And I haven't read it. I kind of scanned through it a little bit, but I have not read it. I wanted to give you my full and genuine reaction, and I'm going to talk about some of the points they're making from my perspective of literally working in organizations all the time. I work in all different types of organizations all over the world with all different racial makeups. I work in some of the biggest organizations that you would all know the name of if I said them. And I work in small startups, and I work everywhere in between. So I've got a good broad perspective about this. Now, because I'm doing this as a reaction video, I'm likely not going to show you stats and data. I can talk through different stats and data and stuff, but you're just going to have to take my word for it. If it helps you, you can actually call me Dr. Burisenko for the purpose of this video, if it helps for you to understand that I do actually know what I'm talking about. But I want this to be a true reaction video. I didn't want to go and find an article or a journal thing for every single point, because that just makes it not fun, and it makes it more daunting and all that stuff. So we're going to go through this article. There are a lot of bullet points. I may skip around a little bit. There's a lot. But and I'm going to tell you what I think. But before we do that, I just want to do one quick plug, man. Listen, I have only been not a Democrat for 2 or 3 months now, and I'm already really, really sick of being censored on traditional social media. I'm sick of it. Not only for myself, because I really haven't been censored all that much, but watching conservatives that I interact with censored for, stupid things. Really stupid things that are not worthy of even a moment's thought, let alone someone deciding we're going to censor you and not say that. So I'm going to be moving most of my content production over to Locals from now on. Now, I'm still going to be posting on YouTube. I'm still going to be doing other things, but really Locals is going to become the hub of my content. You can join my community at kb.locals.com. The community is free to join, but if you want to participate in the discussions and some of the activities we're going to do together as a group, there is a small monthly subscription fee. You can give it your first month for free by using the promo code WELCOME. And then it's $5 a month after that. It's really designed to keep the trolls out, have that small little barrier to entry, just so people who are just trying to harass us don't make their way into the community. So I do hope to see you on Locals. Again, that's kb.locals.com. We have great discussions. We're going to do all sorts of awesome things together. I'm really excited about it. All right, let's get back into this article, shall we? Now, that I want to acknowledge this is from 2001. I don't know how much social justice crazy town has changed since 2001, but that's a long time. but this is what I have, and so this is what we're going to go with. Below is a list of characteristics of white supremacy culture which show up in organizations. Culture is powerful precisely because it is so present and at the same time so very different to name or identify. It's actually not that hard to name and identify. The characteristics listed below are damaging because they are used as norms and standards without being proactively named or chosen by the group. That's not true either. They are damaging because they promote white supremacy thinking. They're damaging to both people of color and to white people. So apparently white supremacy is also damaging to white people. Organizations that are people of color led or a majority people of color can also demonstrate many damaging characteristics of white supremacy culture. So basically anyone can be a white supremacist. You don't even need to be white. Don't even need to be white to be a white supremacist. All right. Perfectionism. Little appreciation expressed among people for the work that others are doing. Appreciation is expressed usually directed towards those who get most of the credit anyway. Okay, listen, this has nothing to do with your race. 70% of people are uncomfortable giving positive feedback. 70% of people. And also, it's actually about 75% of the people, so even a little bit more. 75% of people are uncomfortable receiving positive feedback. Now, I have always been, even in my whiteness, I have always been a great proponent of giving out as much positive feedback, as much recognition as possible. Your magic ratio that you're looking for is 5-to-1. You want 5 pieces of positive feedback for every 1 piece of critical feedback. And everyone should be doing that, but this has nothing to do with white supremacy. This has to do with the fact that most people, regardless of race, are not brought up to love themselves unconditionally. And if you don't love yourself unconditionally, it is really hard to give out appreciation and love to other people. In the workplace, outside the workplace, doesn't really matter. More common is to point out either how the person or the work is inadequate. That's true of all races and organizations, all races. Or even more common, to talk to others about the inadequacies of a person or their work without ever talking directly to themselves. Most people are very uncomfortable giving out feedback that has nothing to do with race. Mistakes are seen as personal, i.e. they reflect badly on the person making them as opposed to being seen for what they are, mistakes, nothing to do with race. Making a mistake is confused with being a mistake or doing wrong or being wrong. I cannot say that I've ever actually seen that in practice. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I'm not going to say it never happens, but I cannot actually say that I've ever seen any. And listen, I've trained thousands of managers. I've trained thousands of managers of all different races. I've never seen someone call a person a mistake or insinuate that a person is a mistake rather than focusing on what they did. Little time, energy, or money put into reflection or identifying lessons learned that can improve practice. In other words, little or no learning from mistakes. This is BS, man. After action reviews come in, those happen all the time in organizations. You implement a project, then you have a discussion about what could go better. Could they happen more often? Probably, but again, that has nothing to do with race, and to say this doesn't happen is absolutely incorrect. Tendency to identify what's wrong, little ability to identify, name, or appreciate what's right. Okay, that's just wrong. So all of this is wrong. All of this under the perfectionism heading has absolutely nothing to do with the race of the person. It has to do with other underlying psychological factors. I am fully on board. If this person wants to make the argument that there should be more positive feedback given in organizations, I am 100% on board with that. Guess what? Most people have not received any positive feedback in the last 30 days. It's something like only 30% of people have received, it's only 20% of people have received any positive feedback from their boss in the last month of their employment. And that's true in normal times. I don't know how it is right now. I don't know that specific research has been done into this era and feedback and how it's impacted it. I'm sure there will be. But in normal times, only 20% of people have received any positive feedback in the last 30 days. And if you increase that timeline, it still only goes up to like 30%. So positive feedback is difficult all around, and that has nothing to do with your skin color. Nothing to do with it at all. Sense of urgency. Continued sense of urgency that makes it difficult to take time to be inclusive, encourage democratic and or thoughtful decision-making, to think long-term, to consider consequences. All right, so it's obvious on this one that it was written in 2001 because I see, oh my God, so many organizations putting so much money and so much time into considering what it takes to be more inclusive. And some of it is very warranted. I'm not going to say that I think every diversity and inclusion initiative is a waste of time, because I just don't think that that's true. I think that some of them are absolutely very warranted. A lot of them, though, are just for show. They're just to say we did something. It's like a feel-good thing. But it doesn't actually empower people of color. It doesn't actually make them feel, I won't say maybe it does make them feel more included, I don't know, but it doesn't actually empower them to do more, which is really what I'm concerned about. When I'm working with an organization, I want to see that individuals feel personally empowered to contribute what they can to meeting the organization's mission. And that's that personal empowerment piece that I'm most interested in. And that can, by the way, include, are there opportunities for promotion? Are there opportunities for mentoring, for coaching, things like that? And so, you know, I see a lot of headway in this. And so this is reflective, I think, of the fact that this was created 20 years ago. Frequently results in sacrificing potential allies for quick and highly visible results. For example, sacrificing interests of communities of color in order to win victories for white people. That doesn't happen in organizations. That doesn't happen. What are you talking about? Reinforced by funding proposals which promise too much work for too little work, and by funders who expect too much for too little. I honestly have no idea what they're even talking about in this. Okay, let's look at some anecdotes. Realistic workplaces. Leadership which understands that things take a little... Okay, I now understand what they're going for. What they're talking here are differences in work style, differences in approach. There are some work styles that are much more inclined to move much more quickly, to make fast decisions. There are some work styles that are much more inclined to move slowly, be more thoughtful and pragmatic in their decision making. That's what they're talking about here. This has nothing to do with race. This is differences in work style and approach. That's what it is. Defensiveness. The organizational structure is set up and much energy spent trying to prevent abuse and protect power as it exists, rather than to facilitate the best out of each person or to clarify who has power and how they are expected to use it. These people are like obsessed with power. Now, I don't necessarily disagree that organizational structures usually are set up in a very hierarchical way to make it very clear who is the final decision maker. However, when I'm training with organizations and managers, what I try to teach them is how can you delegate as much power and decision making down to the people working for you? Because if you can push decision making, I'll use their word, if you can push power and decision making down to people who make less money, because the boss usually, almost always, gets paid more than the people reporting to the boss. So if you can take the boss's work and push it down to people who are probably perfectly capable of accomplishing those same tasks, then you're actually getting those tasks accomplished at a lower dollar value for the organization. That is an efficient way to do it. That is the argument. It's about efficiency. Additionally, when a boss pushes tasks down to lower level employees, what they're doing is they're freeing themselves up to take on even higher dollar value tasks. So you're accomplishing much more for the same investment of salary into these tasks. So that's what it is. That's what it should be. This has, again, nothing to do with skin color. Because of either or thinking, see below, okay, criticism of those with power is viewed as threatening and inappropriate. That's not true. That's not true. That has nothing to do, well, okay, it's true in piss poorly run organizations. It's true when managers aren't doing the things that they should be doing just as human beings, but that has nothing to do with white supremacy. There are so many wonderful managers out there who will ask for criticism, who sometimes will beg for criticism from their people. I actually train managers to do regular feedback loops with their employees, to teach their employees to give them ongoing critical feedback. And, well, oh my God, I'm like as pasty white as you can get, and I'm training managers to do this. So that's bunk. That's ran by someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. People respond to new or challenging ideas with defensiveness, making it very difficult to raise those ideas. That's a work style issue. Some people are going to be more critical of ideas and more defensive than others. That has to do with their work style. That has to do with how they approach the task that they're given. That doesn't have to do with their skin color. A lot of energy in organizations is spent trying to make sure that people's feelings aren't getting hurt or working around defensive people. Well, I mean, that's contradictory, though. That's contradictory. I mean, first of all, the people whose feelings you need to worry about hurting are not the defensive people. The defensive people, you can barely say anything to hurt their feelings. They're very much non-emotional people. These are the people that are going to be naturally defensive based on their work style. These are the facts don't care about your feelings people. That's who they are. The people who are more likely to have their feelings hurt are actually directly opposite of the people who are likely to be defensive. So they don't even, those are two different audiences that they're talking about. And doesn't have to do with race. The defensiveness of people in power creates an oppressive culture. It has nothing to do with being in power. It has to do with their work style. Quantity over quality. All resources and organizations are directed towards producing measurable goals. How does that make you white supremacist that you're working towards goals? That's, dude, I can't. If you don't know why that's not white supremacist, I can't help you. Stop watching this video right now. I can't help you with that. Like, organizations are supposed to work towards goals. Crying out loud. Things that can be measured are more highly valued than things that cannot. Anything can be measured. Anything can be measured. You can get very creative with how you're measuring it, but we can measure pretty much anything. For example, the number of people attending a meeting, that can actually be wait, hang on. Are they saying, okay, I'm going to start again. Things that can be measured are more highly valued than things that cannot. For example, the number of people attending a meeting. Meetings are not considered productive when they have too many people in them, dude. Higher numbers in meetings do not necessarily mean greater productivity. In fact, the maximum number of people that you should have in a meeting is like 8 people, and that's even pushing it. So if you have a higher number of people in meetings, that doesn't actually make it more valuable. That makes it less valuable. Newsletter circulation. Money spent are valued more than quality of relationships. We can measure quality of relationships. I do it every day. Democratic decision making. I can measure that. Ability to constructively deal with conflict. Holy hell. Dude, on rallybright.com, go there right now. There's a personal profile that you can sign up for. It has a goddamn conflict style assessment. I can measure how people deal with conflict. I can then take those individual measurements and look at how teams deal with conflict. This is well known. This is not even a new thing. So absolutely, we can measure all those things. Little or no value attached to process. If it can't be measured, it has no value. I mean, that's true. If it can't be measured, it has no value. But again, anything can be measured. Discomfort with emotions and feelings. I mean, about 50% of the population is going to have discomfort with emotions and feelings. That's based on their work style. That has nothing to do with their race. No understanding that when there is a conflict between content, the agenda of the meeting, and process, people's need to feel heard and engaged, process will prevail. For example, you may get through the agenda, but if you haven't paid attention to people's needs to be heard, the decisions made on the meeting are undermined and or discouraged. Okay, they are actually right about this. They are actually right about this. In order to buy into a decision, people need to feel that their ideas were heard, considered, understood, and explained within the context of the decision. That comes from a book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. It is one of the best books you will ever read about functional teamwork. It also talks about productive conflict as being a core part of any team's success. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni. You know what he doesn't talk about in that book? Race. Doesn't talk about it. I mean, to the best of my recollection, I haven't read it in years, but I do actually teach things from the book. He doesn't talk about race. But this is actually true. If you want people to buy into things that you want to do, you have to make sure they feel that you've heard them and that you've considered their perspective. Worship of the written word. If it's not in a memo, it doesn't exist. Who even writes memos anymore? Again, this is 2001. I can't ding them too much for that, but no one writes memos anymore. The organization does not take into account or value other ways in which information gets shared. Wrong. There are strong documentation. Those with strong documentation or writing skills are more highly valued, even in organizations where ability to relate to others is key to the mission anecdotes. Well, I mean, if you're talking about an organization or a process or a job in which writing is a critical skill set, yes, people are going to be more valued when they're able to write. If you're talking about something that requires the written word to be clear, to be concise, to be written in an engaging way, yes, those are going to take more value, but that's not true in a lot of positions. Take the time to analyze how people inside and outside the organization get and share information. Figure out what needs to be written down and come up with alternative ways. Why do we need alternative ways to document? Okay, this is so old school. I'm just even going to skip over that one because, like, this whole section, it reeks to me of, like, this is a 20-year-old document. We'll just go through them really quick. Only one right way. That's a work style thing. That is a work. So many of the things they're talking about, it has to do with the person's work style. That is a clear work style thing, that there's only one right way to do things. That is about 25% of the population are going to have that perspective. That has nothing to do with their race. The belief there's only one right way to do things, and once people are introduced to the right way, they will see the light and adopt it. Well, here's the thing. You have to understand why organizations are doing the things that they're doing. There's almost always rationale for why things are a certain way, and you have to learn the why and learn the process before you can go in and change it. If you don't understand the why of why a process exists, then going in and trying to change it, you're setting yourself up for failure. So this is just being smart. This is not white supremacy. This is just being smart. Similar to the missionary who does not see value in the culture of other communities, only sees value in their beliefs about what is good. That is a horrible analogy. That analogy is actually offensive. This is not, okay, I'm not even going to go into that. That is offensive. To compare a missionary not seeing value in the culture of the community that they're in to someone doing something a certain way for probably very good reasons. Come on, man. Paternalism. Decision-making is clear to those with power and unclear to those without it. I agree that decision-making should be a transparent process, and in organizations that I train, it is a transparent process. Those with power think they're capable of making decisions for and in the interests of those without power. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Why even have bosses if they can't make decisions? Why? Why even have bosses? Now, I will be the first to say that they should actually be consulting with their groups. They should be talking about it. They should be getting feedback. They should be doing all those things to gain buy-in. But at some point, someone has got to be the final decision maker, and it is just stupid. It is moronic of a boss to make decisions without trying to bring their team on board. It's stupid. Those with power often don't think it is important or necessary to understand the viewpoints or expertise of those for whom they're making decisions. I just covered that. Those without power understand that they do not have it and understand who does. Welcome to having a job where you have a boss that has absolutely nothing to do with your race. People have bosses. It's the way, unless you work for yourself, and then you have to be your own boss. That's a totally different thing. But people have bosses. It's the way it works. Those without power do not really know how decisions get made, who makes the decisions, and yet they are completely familiar with the impact of those decisions on them. And again, we've already discussed this. This should be a transparent process. You should have buy-in from people. You should really make sure you're understanding different points of view. One of the core, because I train on leadership as well, one of the core things that a leader will do when they're thinking about making a decision, making a big change to a process, is they have to kind of kick the tires of the process. They have to seek out information from different sources in an informal way. And then once they think they've got a pretty good solid idea from seeking out that input, then they actually have to go out for a formal round of input. So I teach people to do this all the time. And again, I'm pasty white, but there you go. Either or thinking. Things are either or, good or bad, right or wrong, with us or against us. That's a work style thing. 25%. They're really focusing in. Listen, so there are I use the DISC model for work styles, and DISC model has 4 major primary work styles, and then there's a lot of nuance in that. I'm not going to go into the DISC model, but what they're really focusing in on is kind of the most pain in the ass work style, which is the conscientious style, which is very black and white thinking, my way or the highway, things are right and wrong. Only about 25% of the population have that as their primary work style. So it has nothing to do with your race. That is a work style thing, and it is a small minority of the population that actually has that as their work style. Closely linked to perfectionism is making it difficult to learn from mistakes or accommodate conflict. I teach people how to do after actions to learn from mistakes all the dang time. No sense that things can be both and or. I literally teach that. Literally wrote a whole book about it. It's called Zen Your Work. You can get it on Amazon, man. I teach that all the time. The whole book is not about that. There are other things in the book too, but I absolutely teach that. Results in trying to simplify complex things, for example, believing that poverty is simply a result of a lack of education. I don't know how to apply that to the workplace. Creates conflict and increases sense of urgency as people are felt they have to make decisions. Someone should have taken a writing course or gotten a proofreader. Are felt they have to make decisions to do either this or that. We've already covered this. Power hoarding. Little, if any, value about sharing power. Power is seen as limited, only so much to go around. I mean, in a hierarchical organization, you're going to have less people at the top than you do at the bottom. That's just part of the deal, man. Those with power feel threatened when anyone suggests changes. That's a big assumption right there. A lot of people in power do not feel threatened if you suggest changes. Sometimes they do. Absolutely. There are absolutely bosses, usually ones who are underqualified for the positions that they hold, that will feel threatened if you come to them and say, I want to do this differently. I want to make a different decision. Absolutely, it does happen. But there are also an awful lot of bosses that, frankly, they would love for you to come with more ideas. Oh my God, I train so many managers where they're just like, Carlin, how can I just get people to come to me with ideas or to do things without me having to ask them? Like, all the time. That is the majority of managers that I end up training have that perspective. They're not trying to hoard power away. Those with power don't see themselves as hoarding power or feeling threatened. Okay, so so we've already said, like, if they don't feel like they're hoarding power, they're deluding themselves. Okay. Those with power assume they have the best interests of the organization at heart, most of the time because they do, and assume those wanting change are ill-informed, stupid, emotional, or inexperienced. They don't assume that at all. Yeah, I mean, sometimes they assume they're inexperienced because usually they tend to have less experience, but I have never once worked with a manager who assumed their people were stupid, and I've worked with some pretty crappy managers. I have never once heard that come out of someone's mouth. Fear of open conflict. People in power are scared of conflict and try to ignore it or run from it. Again, I'm going to point you out to Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, one of the best-selling leadership management books of all time. Of all time. And one of the core tenets that he talks about is conflict. Embracing conflict. Seeing conflict as a good, positive thing that is going to drive the success of the team. One of the best-selling management books of all time. When someone raises an issue that causes discomfort, the response is to blame the person for raising the issue rather than to look at the issue, which is actually causing the problem. I agree with that. There is a tendency in a lot of organizations, to do this, where they don't know how to solve the problem, and so they focus on the fact that the problem has been presented rather than digging to the core of why the problem exists. I absolutely agree with that, but it has nothing to do with skin color. Emphasis on being polite. Hang on. You have just spent an entire document already talking about how people are so rude and don't care about people's feelings in the workplace, and now we're saying, oh, you shouldn't focus on being polite either. So which is it? Which do you want? You have to pick one. You can't pick both. Do you care about facts or do you care about emotions? And really, I'm not actually making an either or statement here. You can care about both. You should care about both. But they've spent this entire document talking about one thing, and now they're just like flipping it and saying, no, you gotta do this other thing over here that's completely contradictory to all the stuff we just told you to do. Come on. Equating the raising of different issues with being impolite, rude, or out of line. I think that's kind of the same thing. Individualism. Little experience or comfort being a part of a team. I mean, how does that have to do with race? That has to do with a lack of experience. People in organizations believe they are responsible for solving problems alone. That's an attribute of a team that has not come together to form a highly resilient, cohesive team, and it is a lower performing team generally. But listen, man, that makes up about hang on, I'm doing math in my head. Less than 20% of all teams actually fall into that category. Less than 20%. Now, it is very hard to create a high-performing, highly resilient team, but most teams, about 62% of teams, are actually already coming together to form that cohesive team. That's the biggest block. Some of them are acting still as individual contributors, but more so, they're moving into that cohesive team state. So about 62% of teams are already starting to get there. About 18% of teams are really good, and about 2% of teams are really, really, really good. It's only that like bottom 20% that are doing this, and those are lower performing teams. Accountability, if any, goes up and down, not sideways to peers or to others or to those the organization is set up to serve. Well, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. Wrong. Desire for individual recognition and credit. Hang on. Okay, I'm sorry. You just said earlier in the thing, in the very first one that we looked at, it was all about giving out positive feedback and recognition. And now you're saying a desire for recognition is white supremacist. Again, choose one. You can't have them both. You can either want people to get positive recognition or you don't want people to get positive recognition. I'm still going to come down on the side of everyone, of every race, of every gender, of every orientation, of every group you could possibly be a part of. Everyone needs positive recognition. Every single person. Everyone. Leads to isolation. I don't know what that means. Competition more highly valued than cooperation, where cooperation is valued. Little time or resources go into developing skills to help them cooperate. This is a work style thing. People who are highly individualistic are, shocker, directly opposite of the work style that is highly collaborative. It is a work style issue. Creates a lack of accountability as organizations value those who can get things done on their own without needing supervision or guidance. Anecdotes. Yes, organizations absolutely do value people who empower themselves to get shit done. Now, it might not necessarily be that they're empowering themselves to get shit done on their own. They like to get shit done, and it simply comes down to that. If they need to work with other people to get it done, then that is what is expected. Connected to individual. I have no idea what the rest of these mean. Sorry, I'm going a little fast now because it's really hot in my office and I want to turn off my big light. Observed in systems of accountability and ways we determine success. Progress is an organization which expands, adds staff, adds projects, or develops the ability to serve more people. Well, not in today's world, is it? So many organizations have downsized lately. So many organizations, even if they aren't really in financial difficulty, have taken advantage of this situation to downsize their staff, cut the fat, if you will. Are those organizations now not considered white supremacist? I would really like to know the answer to that, actually. Gives no value, not even negative value to its cost. For example, increased accountability to funders as the budget grows. Okay, let's talk about accountability for a second, because I've talked about 5 dysfunctions of a team already. So the basic pyramid of 5 dysfunctions of a team is you have to start with trust. If trust is lacking on a team, you can't get anything. Next up comes conflict, because if you don't have trust, you can't have productive conflict. Next up comes buy-in to commitment to what you're working on. Next up after commitment comes accountability. Accountability, again, one of the core things that is spoken about in one of the best-selling management books of all time. So, there's that. Objectivity, the belief that there is such a thing as being objective. I don't believe there's such a thing as being objective. In fact, I have taken a rash of hell on this channel for saying things like there is no such thing as objective reality. Last week, I did a stream of one of my most popular keynote talks called The Psychology of Office Politics, where I have a whole section about there being no such thing as an objective reality. You can go back and watch it if you don't believe me. I talk about that all the time. The belief that emotions are inherently destructive, irrational, and should not play a role in decision-making or group process. We've already debunked that one. Invalidating people who show emotion, work style issue, we've debunked it. Requiring people to think in a linear fashion and ignoring and invalidating those who think in other ways, that is a work style issue. Impatient with any thinking that does not appear logical to those in power. Again, everything in this category is the conscientious work style that's on the DISC model. It's about 25% of the population. It is not everyone, and it has nothing to do with your race. Oh, looks like we're almost done. Okay. Right to comfort. No one has a right to comfort. And listen, man, I do what I do because I believe that organizations should be positive places to work. And I know that every single piece of research we have about what it takes to be a successful organization depends on it being a satisfying, emotionally stable place to work. We know that. Now, that's not to say that organizations need to do that. There are successful organizations that are horrible places to work all the time. But the best business results almost always will come when they are positive, uplifting, empowering places to work. And those organizations that are really, really crappy to work at, they might have short-term success, but it is not sustainable over the long term. The belief that those in power have a right to emotional and psychological comfort, another aspect of, okay, and again, this is saying those in power, everyone has a right to that. Everyone has a right to that. It is not just those in power. And so, in fact, a lot of times those in power, they have more stress than anyone else. That is the God's honest truth. They have more stress than anyone else. Scapegoating those who cause discomfort, that happens. I'm not going to lie. Absolutely happens. Has nothing to do with your race. I've been scapegoated for causing discomfort, goddammit. Equating individual acts of unfairness against white people with systemic racism, which daily targets people of color. I don't even know what that means, and I'm disinclined to figure out. Listen, this is bunk, okay? Every single thing that they talked about in this document that they say is white supremacy, it literally has nothing to do with race. It has to do with your perspective and the approach that you bring to the work environment. That is like 90% of the issues here, and a lot of these things are taught, the things that they want, the things that they say are going to counterbalance white supremacy. I teach them literally all the time. This has nothing to do with race. This is all about how we create positive, productive work experiences. And I'm sorry, like, I find it offensive that everything bad, every bad aspect of an organization is just, it's you white people inflicting your white supremacy onto us. That's not the way it works, man. Life is far more complex than that. You even want in your document here for life to be far more complex than that. So own it. Own it. I can't even with this stuff. No. Organizations are not fundamentally white supremacist. That doesn't mean that there should not be some focus on making sure that every single person, regardless of their race, regardless of their background, regardless of any sort of identifiable, immutable characteristic, they should have every opportunity available to them. But they have to want to take advantage of those opportunities. The organization's responsibility is to make sure they have every chance to take advantage of every opportunity that they want to. It is not to make sure that everyone has an equal outcome in terms of their career success. Just not the way it works, man. This is the real world. This is not the land of make-believe, of freaking gender studies and ethnic studies departments. That is not the real world. That is higher education. I'm talking about the real world. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks for sticking around, and I will catch you in the next video.